Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sports Nerds in the Morning. Josh Golden here.
Dominic Stern.
Malad Gaimi.
Jordan Goldman.
And we are here to talk to you guys today about basketball. We got some NCAA to talk about and we got some NBA to talk about. But we're going to start you guys off with some college basketball first. And then eventually we'll get drafted into the NBA and start talking about the NBA. So starting off with college. It's getting to that time of year where we're starting to watch some of these teams, see what they can do, see who's going to get hot in a month when we get to March Madness. So what do you guys think so far?
It seems like there's some teams that are starting to separate themselves from the pack. Obviously, Duke beat UVA twice. Only team to beat them so far. Gonzaga, they're not going to lose a game until the tournament for the rest of the year. Their only two losses are on the road at UNC and Tennessee, who are both top 10 teams right now. I love Nevada. They're huge athletic freaks who are all seniors. They all know each other very well. Duke, obviously, don't have to say enough about them. And then Tennessee, they're getting overlooked again. Obviously, last year they got upset by the Ramblers of Loyola Chicago, but this year they look really good. Huge matchup this week against Kentucky, who's also very hot after they struggled at the beginning of the year. Figured themselves out, and they're playing really well. It's going to be a great game.
Yeah, that's their prove-it game right there. Anyone who's doubting Tennessee, me included, if they beat Kentucky, I'll shut my mouth and I'll say this team is legit.
Well, I mean, we were talking when we were walking over to record this podcast that Josh said that Duke should be the number one team in the country. And I said, well, it's not going to matter because one of these two teams is going to lose a game.
Correct.
By the end of the year. And obviously they both have really tough matchups this week. So Duke's traveling to Louisville. Tennessee's traveling to Rupp Arena, playing Kentucky. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams loses. I'm not going to predict an upset, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams falls.
Yeah, like I said, it just surprises me to see Tennessee as the number one overall team in the country. Yes, they're 22-1, but their only win against a ranked opponent came against Gonzaga earlier in the year. They haven't played anyone that spectacular in the SEC. They're going to play Kentucky, and that's going to be their prove-it game. Like I said, if they beat Kentucky, they're a legit team, but I just don't see them winning in Kentucky.
Looking at the rankings, the top 25 that just recently got released, Kansas State jumped from unranked to number 18 in the country, and they had a really successful tournament last year for their seeding, and now they're number one. They're number one in the Big 12 ahead of Kansas right now. They're gonna play Texas soon, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where they go because jumping from non-ranked to 18 is something you don't see a lot. And with some big wins, I think they could start climbing their way towards a sleeper team in the tournament.
Absolutely. And another team to me that has been fascinating to watch this year is Kansas is outside of the top 10, and they're looking like something is going wrong. Last night they had a tough game. They survived in overtime, but they're just not looking like the Kansas team we expect to watch.
Well, and you also have to point out that Udoka Azubuike, he's out for the season. He's the big man. He's kind of get the ball inside to him and then guard space out and they're open for three. LaGerald Vick, he's going into leave, I guess you could say that. Mm-hmm. So he's one of their best shooters. They're struggling. Obviously, they're going to make it to the tournament. They're going to make a run later in the Big 12. So Kansas, they're always a surefire Elite 8 team. Not sure I'd put them there or close to that yet, but I think they'll be fine come tournament time.
Yeah, and last week, they had a tough loss against Kansas State. Obviously that's not what they wanted, and they're falling behind in the standings, but it's really just about doing good in that tournament for their conference. Once they do good there, have a good stretch, win the championship, get the automatic bid, I think they'll be in a good position. It's really about that conference tournament. I think that's a really huge factor going into March Madness.
Whenever I get to March Madness, I'm always looking at who's getting hot in the conference tournaments in the couple weeks before it. Because everything with this tournament is just who's the best team. It's who's the hot team. Like Loyola Chicago, let's be honest, they were not the best team in that region when they made the Final Four. They just got hot at the right time and they just went rolling. And that's how you win this tournament. So we'll see what happens.
They also got lucky to the 1, 2, 4, 5.
Yes.
All those seeds, they all lost. So, they obviously beat the 3 and the 6 and the 7 seeds, but they got hot. You're 100% correct. They benefited from the fact that Wichita State is no longer in the Missouri Valley Conference.
Absolutely.
So, they're another team that they're doing just as well as last year. They're hopefully they'll
9-3 right now, 2 games up in their conference over Illinois State and Missouri State and Drake.
yeah. So hopefully we'll get to see them play in March again this year.
Yeah, and I mean, last year the two finals were Villanova and Michigan. And for me, I'll brag as much as I want because I picked those two to be in the finals. I think that the reason why I picked those games was because Villanova plays in the Big East. It's not an easy conference. Not a lot of guys are ranked all the time, but still, at the end of the day, Georgetown is Georgetown. Seton Hall is Seton Hall. Those are always going to be tough matchups, especially with the bigs that they have in that conference. Villanova stomped on every team in that tournament, and then Michigan was my other pick. I really like Michigan because they had an up and down season, and they had a lot of raw talent and potential. They had guys like Mo Wagner, stuff like that. And what I liked about them is they came into their tournament as well, where they play teams like Wisconsin, just powerhouse teams in that Big Ten. And they did a great job. They won their tournament, and I felt their region was a good spot. So it's all about not only what region you're in, which teams you're playing, but it's also how you're doing in that tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's all about getting hot, and those teams. That's why the teams that are lower seeded, they get those upsets because they had to win their conference tournament to get in,
Exactly.
which means they've won 4, 5, even more games in a row just to get in. And so then they play some of these teams where, they're projected 3 seed going into the final month of the season. Oh, now they're a 6 seed. Guess what? They're vulnerable to an upset. And times like that, those are when you want to predict those upsets. And we see it every year, and then everyone acts shocked, but they really shouldn't be.
Absolutely. But also, to go along with your conference champion to those mid-major conferences, there's always the one bubble team that you've heard of, but you haven't paid that much attention to this year that's making an impact. So who do you guys see to be that team this year to come into the tournament, kind of overlooked, and make a huge, huge impact?
I'm going to go with Syracuse.
Absolutely.
And Josh.
Absolutely.
I
Josh-
definitely agree with that.
Of course, Josh is going to love that because he's a Syracuse fan. But I mean, Syracuse, they run a 2-3 zone, as I'm sure you've all heard, and no one can really figure it out. And they're doing very well in the ACC right now. Obviously, they haven't had a very tough schedule yet, but
They've got a tough road coming up.
yes, if they could win a couple games down the stretch and win a couple games in the ACC tournament, they'll be a 10, 11, 9 seed like they were last year, and they'll look to try and get some more upsets.
Absolutely. I mean, they already have 8 wins in the ACC. They have 7 games left. 4 of them are against ranked opponents. The other 3 are on the road against unranked opponents. But I still think they're gonna pull out at least 3, maybe 4 wins there. They get 10, 11 wins in the conference. They're gonna be a tournament team, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And if this team starts shooting the 3 well, they shoot 50% from 3 like they did in that Duke game in Cameron back a month or so ago, you're not gonna beat this team. When they are shooting really well, there's no beating the Syracuse team. And I think if they can get hot at the right time, they can make a massive, massive impact.
I really like Syracuse as a bubble team. I think they can really turn it on. They had some great games in the tournament last year as well, if you want to look at it last year. Now, for me, I'm actually going to go with Arizona State as my bubble team. The reason why is I like Bobby Hurley as a coach. I think his system really works, and I think he's the coach that can lead a team into the tournament and possibly win some games. On top of that, they have some great bigs up front. They have Tayshaun Cherry, who can shoot from outside the three-point line, also drive it in, has some post moves. They have some transfers coming in. I think that's a team that could surprise some people, and they're right there on the bubble. If they make it into the tournament, they really got a good chance to surprise some people.
Yeah, right now they're on the bubble. They're part of that last 4 in. And another team I'm going to stick with is another team from the Pac-12, and obviously the Pac-12 has been really, really bad this year. But a team that's really stood out in the Pac-12 has been Washington this year, and they've been extremely overlooked. They're probably going to make the tournament. Obviously, ASU just beat them this past weekend. ASU's been playing really well. But Washington, they've got great chemistry. They're a big team, and they're playing really well right now, even though they just lost, as I just said. But they'll come in as a mid-seed, and I think they can make it to the second game, possibly upset a high seed and get into the second weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. You look at Washington, though, they definitely look like a good team when they're playing in conference, but when they go outside of their conference and they're playing the ranked opponents like they did earlier this year, playing Auburn, Gonzaga, and Virginia Tech, they lost all 3 of those games by not so favorable margins. The Gonzaga game was close. The other 2 weren't so close. they look good right now. They are the hot team, but they did not look good in the past. So we'll see what happens when we get to tourney time. I don't know how much I trust this Washington team, but they definitely look like they could be a team to watch.
All right. So if we were to pick our Final Four right now, who's in?
Well, obviously it depends on the matchups, who's playing who, but I would say the best 4 teams in the country right now, you got to give it to Duke. That roster is just insane between Zion, Cam Reddish, and RJ Barrett and Trey Jones. They're just stacked. You got to love Virginia. I always give Virginia the love. I think they're an incredible basketball team. They always play great defense, which I love. I'm a big Gonzaga guy this year. I think Hachimura is spectacular. Killian Tilly's great, and Perkins is always there. And 4th, I don't know. I think Marcus Howard is special. I'm going to go Marquette.
Really? All right.
I think there's always that one guy who can put a team on his back every couple of years and just take it in, like your Kemba Walkers, your Shabazz Napiers.
Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose. I see that in Marcus Howard, and I think he's going to carry him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it is actually way too early to look at this. But if I'm
Absolutely.
looking at the picture right now, I'm going to go with, I think Duke is the favorite to be in the Final Four. I think they deserve
Absolutely.
that spot. They're not just a talented team. They can actually play compared to years past. And, I think if Michigan does what they did last year in that tournament, winning their championship, getting the at-large bid, I like Michigan in that Final Four. I want to say Nevada. I really do. But I see problems in that Mountain West division winning games in the actual tournament. They haven't been the most successful of the divisions. So I'm going to go with Duke, Michigan, and then I'm going to go Purdue and Villanova. Those are going to be my 4. Now,
Purdue.
I like Purdue
Wow.
because they have some real big men up front that are going to cause problems. If you saw last year, they had some injuries up at the front, and that's what caused them to have some trouble going deeper into the tournament. But that backup big man who became the star was Matt Harms, and he's back in there. He's older, 1 year older. I think he's going to do a really good job. He's going to be more mobile than he was last year. 7-footer, he's going to block shots. They still have the three-point shooting that they did last year. And then for me, Villanova, I'm a big fan of Jay Wright. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's done a great job with his teams every
Big
year.
Jay Wright fan.
They're coming out of the Big East. Not as good of a division as it was last year, but I think if Villanova gets hot, I think they could also go to the Final Four. I really like their presses. I think if they're down by 4 in the second half, I think they can really come back with those 3-quarter presses that they run. And I don't know. The standings could all change
Absolutely.
soon, but if Purdue and
Villanova is
get
definitely
hot,
a very well-coached team, and they have the talent to get it done like they have in the past.
yeah, those are my teams that on the outside, if they get really hot, they have the potential to go to the Final Four.
All right. My 4 teams, I'm going to start off with UVA. I think they're the best team in the country. Unfortunately, they almost beat Duke and Cameron, and then Duke had their best shooting performance of the year. You're obviously not going to beat them. I think they'll want to get back after last year's performance in the tourney. They got bounced by a 16 seed, so I think they'll make an appearance in the Final Four. I'm going to join Josh, go with Gonzaga. They were my preseason pick to win the Natty, and they're returning a lot of guys. It's hard to go against them. 3rd pick, Nevada. I love Nevada.
I agree with you.
All 5 of their starters are 6'7" or taller, and they're all seniors or 5th-year seniors. It's hard to go against them. They're playing well. They're now starting to roll through the Mountain West. At the beginning of the year, they were like, oh, we'll be winning by 5.5, and then we'll win the next half by like 10 and like 15-point game. They're starting to win games by 20 or 30 points. Starting to roll through it. And then my last pick, I don't know. I feel like those 3 teams are like my surefire teams. I'm going to go with Kentucky. I just feel like they always disappoint, and then this year they've been flying under the radar. I feel like this year they're going to finally get above that and make it to the Final Four.
So you're leaving Duke out?
I am.
Really?
So listen, Duke, they obviously have the most talent out of any team in the nation.
It's not even close.
Yes.
It's not even close.
Doesn't mean they can perform.
But I feel like UVA proved this weekend that if you make them, that you can keep them out of the paint. Obviously, if Duke shoots like that, they're going to win the championship. Right. But they're never going to shoot 50% from 3 again.
Uh-huh.
So I just feel like they're going to run into a hot team in like the Sweet 16 and they're going to get bounced.
Absolutely.
And I really like Nevada as well. I really like those Martin twins. They really showed a lot last year, and they impressed me, and they came onto my radar. My only issue with Nevada is the fact that, first off, they haven't played a ranked team yet.
Mhm.
Okay, now there's two teams that I look at that I can put as a litmus test to see where they're at. That's Loyola Chicago and Arizona State. Those are the only two teams that they played that I saw right off the top that were teams that went into the tournament and did pretty well. So Loyola Chicago, they won by 14. That's definitely a good win.
Very
It
nice
helps
win
their
for them.
resume.
Who's in Loyola Chicago?
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, Arizona State, they only won by 6. So to me, that poses as a threat in the tournament if they play a team like that, that's a little bit taller and longer, that could cause some problems for them and only lead to a close game. But I definitely think, Dom, if Nevada gets hot and starts rolling into the tournament, win a couple early games with the high seed that they'll probably get, I definitely think they can make it to the Final Four.
Absolutely. The one thing I love about this Nevada team that I always say going into the tournament is you want to look for the best team. Not the best players, the best team. The guys in the locker room that have the best brotherhood going together, that are ready to win this thing for each other. Who better to have a brotherhood in the locker room than two brothers?
Yeah.
It's that
Exactly.
simple. I think they're definitely going to be a team to watch. I think they might fall a little bit short this year, but I definitely like them. Real quick before we transition to the NBA, though, what's that? If you're watching one team for the next month before we get to the tournament, what's the one team you're watching to see if they can really be legit for when we get to the tournament?
So, do you mean a team that's borderline legit, and
What's the team that you're going to watch that you're most interested in?
Well, it's
Interpret that however you will.
It's Duke, because they're the most entertaining team to watch. Zion, he's going to be the first overall pick in the draft. RJ Barrett, probably going number 2. Cam Reddish, probably going top 5. I mean, what's not to like about this team? They're fun, they're entertaining, and it's Duke. You always liked it, because you never know. If they lose, you're like, yay, Duke lost. If they play well, you're like, wow, this is spectacular. So that's Duke. And if you say anything else, if you're interpreting it like I did, you can't say anything other than Duke.
Well, for me, I'm going to take it as a team that could really get hot or a team that could really get cold.
Uh-huh.
So for me, it's going to be one of my Final Four teams for me because I picked 3 teams that I felt could really get hot and make it, or they could get really cold and have some trouble and get bounced in the first round. So I'm going to stick with Villanova. Why? Because they're playing Marquette. That's a number 10 team. They're going to play some really solid teams like St. John's. Those are teams where you go to their house and you're going to have some trouble. Now, the other team, I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to cheat here, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I got Purdue because they're going to be playing Minnesota and Indiana, who are 2 bubble teams. Depending on how they do there, I think that sets a little bit of a forecast for how they're going to do in the tournament when they play those other sleeper Cinderella type teams.
All right. Once again, call me biased. Call me a homer like everyone always does.
It's Syracuse.
It's not Syracuse. I'm watching Buffalo.
Okay.
Last year, this team went into the tournament and they beat Arizona. And now they have the exact same guys on the court, and they've been ranked all year. They've gone into every single game they're playing in their conference with a target on their back. And they've lost 2 of those games. They did. But they were tough games that if a couple things go their way, they would have won them. And I think that this team, when they get hot, which I think they will because they got a pretty easy stretch coming up. They got a tough one against Toledo on Friday, but after that the schedule gets a little bit lighter. I think they'll really get going. They play hard like I love to watch. They play like a team like I love to watch. And if they really get rolling like I expect them to do, they could really, really make a big impact when we get to March.
So last year, Loyola Chicago made the Final Four. What do you think about the chances that Buffalo makes it to the Final Four?
I think if it's going to be one of these obscure, not Power 5 teams that make it, it's going to be Buffalo. Unless you count Nevada and Gonzaga.
Yeah, I mean, if you consider those teams, Nevada and Gonzaga are definitely...
They're powerhouses. They're not Power 5, but they're powerhouses.
Gonzaga is a powerhouse. Nevada...
their school is bigger, too.
Yeah.
Buffalo is not a school that's attracting a ton of attention
Yes.
basketball-wise.
Now
New York's
Nevada.
public powerhouse.
Yeah.
Nevada's not a big school. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, it's probably bigger than Buffalo, but
Yeah.
Nevada's never... This is a conference that's been controlled by BYU in the past. Obviously, they're in the West Coast Conference now. In San Diego State. And recently, in the past 3 years, they've taken over. Obviously, Nevada, they lost twice to SDSU in the same week last year. And that's how SDSU got to the tournament. But Nevada, they're starting to become a bigger team. And they're going to start recruiting, so expect this to stay.
But I think Buffalo's been that team that's been in the rankings all year long. And you look at the rankings, and to people who don't watch this team, they're like, wait, why is Buffalo in the rankings? That doesn't make sense. And they've been showing in MAC play throughout the year that we deserve to be in the rankings. We know we're a good basketball team, and once they get to that national spotlight like they're going to get in the tournament, they are going to go off, and I think they could really do some damage, and I expect them to make it at least to the Sweet 16.
And I think for them as a team, they really just got to hit their three-pointers.
Absolutely.
I watched that Arizona game, and that's what they did a lot. They shot the ball really well in the first half, and I felt good about how they did. That's why they won by so much, and they extended their lead by so much. So I really think it's a momentum game for them. They just got to do a good job of it, shooting early, get everyone involved, get everyone going, and get their confidence up.
Play great
That's
team
when
basketball.
They do great. Now, I don't know how good they do in a real close game where the game is close the whole way through and there isn't much of a momentum shift, But I think that's the key for them is to get real hot. They're 20-3. Any team that's 20-3, only 3 losses, that's a team that knows how to win and can come in and shock some teams in the tournament.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to say this Buffalo team isn't good. They don't have any impressive wins. They won in West Virginia. Yes, West Virginia is not great this year, but that's still an impressive win. Winning against San Francisco for them was big. They're the second best team in Gonzaga's conference, and they won in the Carrier Dome. By 12 points. That's a huge win for them. And one of their tough losses was against Marquette, in Marquette. Like, you're going to lose in Marquette. They're a top 10 team. Yeah. This is a team that could do some damage.
They can definitely
watch
hold
out.
on with the top 10.
Just watch out.
Yeah, I like Buffalo. Obviously, the 2 teams from Western New York both beat my final teams when they beat Arizona and then Syracuse beat Michigan State. So still a little bad blood.
It's funny.
But Buffalo's a good team. They shoot really well. Obviously, they showed up big time against Arizona, and then they just decided to go away in the next matchup against Kentucky. So
they had their chances in that game too. I think they blew it a little bit, and these guys are going to come back into the tournament thinking about that Kentucky game, and they're going to be like, we need our redemption, and they're going to come in and get it and make the Sweet 16, I think. So just keep an eye out for them. If they get hot down the stretch, they're a team to watch out for.
And, on top of Buffalo, I mentioned this earlier, Kansas State. They had success in the tournament last year. They're returning a lot of guys. I'm interested to see how they do because they'll face Kansas again at some point. They'll have to face them again, and that's probably the best team that they play in their conference. So after facing Kansas, how did they do? Do they start going on a roller coaster and going uphill from there? And how they do in the tournament as well? Because, I think the thing about these Cinderella teams is being in a weak division. Mm-hmm. When that 1 seed is weak and the 2 seed is not very good, or something happens like with Virginia losing to a 16 seed, once that happens, it shakes everything up, and Absolutely. I think it allows for a team like Buffalo or a team like Kansas State or one of the lower teams that are Cinderella teams to rise up and go to the Final Four.
For Kansas State, the game I'm watching is when they're playing in Kansas on the 25th. That's their coming out game if they really want to make an impact. If they win that game, then they're also a team to watch out for. I think there's a lot of these teams in like the late teens, early 20s, maybe even just outside of the rankings, where if they get that big win at some point in the next couple of weeks, keep an eye on them because if they start rolling, they are going to make an impact come March.
Yeah, and Don mentioned one of them. I mean, Washington, they had 17 votes
Absolutely.
to be in the top 25. That's a team. I think Cincinnati is a team that's always overlooked. Again, another team that's had a good history in basketball. They could come in and do pretty good. Auburn, I don't know how they're going to do, to be honest with you, but they might shock some teams in the tournament. So,
okay, so that's going to conclude our talking about March Madness and NCAA, but let's move on to the NBA. We got drafted, as Josh was referencing earlier. And the NBA, teams are starting to fall in where they want to fall. The Western Conference is starting to – the non-playoff teams are starting to fall out, except for the Lakers. They're still a playoff team. And the Eastern Conference, it's really a 4-team conference if you want to look at it. So what do you guys think of the Celtics at the 5 seed right now, even though they're projected to run away with the Eastern Conference?
Well, I mean, they're going to at least get the 4 seed. We know that. Like, the Pacers are going to fall out now that Oladipo's gone, and it's going to be Milwaukee, Toronto, Philly, and Boston once we get to the Eastern Conference semis. And those 4 have been the Elite 4 in the Eastern Conference this whole year, I think. And I'm excited to watch these 4 when they start to battle it out come playoff time. It's going to be really interesting, but I expect to see Boston pull it out. They're too stacked. They've got everyone they need. They've got the depth that they have. They're a great defensive team. they're well coached. I just think everything they have is what you need to make a run come playoff time.
And I feel like it's important to point out that the Pacers are 6-0 since Oladipo got hurt.
Yeah.
So he's
I
saying
think,
that
I think that's a little quick luck for now, and I think they're eventually going to come down. It's only been 6 games. It's a small sample size, but I don't expect that to keep up.
Yeah, I'm just saying they've won 6 straight since Oladipo got hurt.
I think the East is the interesting conference to look at because there's so many possibilities and so many teams that could rise up. I think Toronto definitely has to be considered a favorite. They have Kawhi, and obviously Kawhi is Kawhi. They have Kyle Lowry, and they're adding more pieces to that front line.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting team. I think it's Philadelphia adding Tobias Harris. That was a huge move on their part. I think that helped their team. They still have Ben Simmons. They have a really young group, Joel Embiid. And, obviously Boston. I mean, if Boston can get their team chemistry together, win some games here, they're on a 2-game losing streak. They're definitely a team that could contend as well. But I don't think the seeding matters. Just in general, I don't think the seeding is a huge deal, except if you're an 8 playing a 1. Maybe then that's a difference. But I could see, 76ers or the Celtics making it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, and it's important to point out that the Bucks are more than just a team than Giannis. The Raptors are more than a team than just Kawhi. And obviously the Sixers and the Celtics, I feel like, are the two
Very
best
well-rounded
teams. But the Bucks and the Raptors have that elite player with players to play around them, like Brogdon, other guys that can play defense and
Chris
shoot the ball. Middleton for the
Middleton's
Bucks.
an all-star this year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, the Raptors just traded for Marc Gasol.
Yeah.
That's a huge move. That's a veteran center who still can definitely play. There's no question about it. And adding that to their team, I thought, I don't think Jonas Valanciunas was that bad, but I think Marc Gasol is an upgrade, and it's something that really helps them out, along with the fact of having Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard, as we mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the Raptors, they were projected to finish either second or third in this conference going into the season. They've, I want to say, exceeded their expectations. And Kawhi Leonard, even though he doesn't look happy, I feel like he's happier here than he was in San Antonio. So it'll be interesting to see how far they go in the playoffs this year and if he wants to stick around there or seek out free agency and go to Los Angeles, which is what he's made it kind of clear of what he wants to do. But we'll see if he ends up sticking to his word or staying in Toronto.
Absolutely. You mentioned that the Raptors picked up Marc Gasol, which is obviously a big deal for the Raptors, but the Bucks also picked up Mirotic, which I think is really going to help them a lot once we get to playoff time. It's a big man for them to grab a couple of rebounds, maybe shoot a little bit.
Yeah, and he can shoot from outside as well.
These 4 teams are really going to have to fight it out tough when we get to the playoffs, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch. But I think Boston's just the most well-rounded team. They're the best coached team of the 4.
I totally agree with you.
They're going to find a way to pull it out.
And, looking at the Western Conference, I think there's 2 storylines, really. Number 1, who can beat the Warriors?
No one.
Okay. Number 2, can the Lakers make the playoffs?
Yes. No. Why no?
Because you've seen it this year. LeBron is not doing enough with these kids to make the playoffs in a tough conference.
Well, he's also been injured. And the point I'll make is this. In my opinion, if the standings hold where they are, 1 through 6, okay? Warriors, Nuggets, Thunder, Trailblazers, Rockets, Jazz. I think if the Lakers do get the 7th seed, I think it is possible for them to bounce the Nuggets and advance in the playoffs. I think it is a possibility. Of the first 4, I'd say the Nuggets are the best chance for them to move on in the playoffs.
I don't disagree with that, but I still don't think they're beating the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets are the best chance of these top 4 teams right now for them to beat.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to beat the Nuggets. I think it'll go 6 or 7 games maybe, but I don't expect them to pull that out. I think LeBron's going to get to the playoffs and obviously put a little more effort in like he always does, but I just don't expect this team making a big impact this year. This offseason, they'll go out and get Anthony Davis and Klay Thompson like everyone thinks they're going to get. I don't know if that'll actually happen. We'll see. But this isn't the year for the Lakers.
I mean, I look at Kyle Kuzma, in that huge loss that they had recently, 20-point loss, he put up about 36 points.
Yeah.
He's a young guy in this league, putting up 36 points. I think that's really big. Lonzo Ball is still not there. I think he's going to come back. I think he can change things, and he's done a good job. this season, just passing the ball, getting it to LeBron, getting it to the other guys in the scores. Brandon Ingram, I think, is the huge X factor because if he can show up to play and shoot like he's supposed to, play like the Kevin Durant that they think he is, then I think the Lakers have a chance to slide in that 7 seed. And we were just talking about college basketball. If they end on an 8-game winning streak, something crazy, right?
Yeah.
End the season on an 8-game winning streak, and they go into Denver to play them in a 7-game series, I think they have a chance to win and move on.
Yeah.
And this is LeBron we're talking about. I haven't seen him get bounced in the first round in a while.
How many years has it been since LeBron got bounced in the first round? Who knows?
Since he was on the Cavs before
Yeah.
he went to the Heat.
It's been a long, long time, but I just they don't look the same. They don't look like a LeBron team. It just looks like
Lance Stevenson
It
is a
doesn't-
playoff guy. He turns it on in the playoffs.
it just doesn't look right. It's hard to put words to it, but it just doesn't
Yeah.
look right.
I mean, it's still LeBron and it's the Lakers. They're obviously they're not going to make a run to the finals or anything like that. They're a team that's
Yeah, LeBron's streak of 8 ends this year. He's not making the finals again.
yeah, I think we can all agree with that. And the Lakers' hope is that they make the playoffs this year, get some playoff experience for the young guys, and the Warriors start to crumble a bit. That's kind of their hope.
Mhm.
And these uprising teams like the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Blazers, even the Rockets, they kind of decline or they don't get better. Because this team, it's still young, it's still... LeBron's obviously the leader, and it showed when he got hurt and they started declining. But I feel like once he gets 100%, because I feel like we can all agree that LeBron's not 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
For sure.
So once he gets to 100%, which hopefully will be after the All-Star break, which is coming up shortly, that he can start to put his team more on his back like it was before he got hurt.
You mentioned the All-Star break, and I just wanted to make a quick comment. I mentioned the Lakers getting Anthony Davis and Klay Thompson earlier. I just want to bring up the point that when LeBron James was drafting his reserves for his All-Star team, the first 2 picks that he made were Anthony Davis and Klay Thompson. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. It's not. But that's some sort of recruitment going on right there, and I just felt like that needed to be pointed out to our viewers. What do you guys think of that?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's not, just because I mean it's LeBron. Everything he does is business-like.
Strategic.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, he doesn't care if his team wins the All-Star game. He cares about building bonds with more players and creating better relationships and ultimately improving his status for the future. And I feel like that's what he was when Giannis said, "Hey, is that tampering?" Obviously, he was being sarcastic, but at the same time, he's not wrong.
And, my interest is if the Lakers were to get Anthony Davis, I just hope that they don't ship out Kyle Kuzma. I think that's the one guy who has to be untouchable. Ideally, I'd like to keep Lonzo, Kuzma, and obviously LeBron, right? But I just really hope I think it's going to be the worst mistake that they make if they were to just get rid of Kuzma, because if I'm another team, I want Kuzma. I don't want Ingram. I'd rather have Kuzma. And Ingram can still turn out to be great. I think he still has the potential. He obviously needs to gain weight. They've said that since he was drafted. He needs to put on pounds, put on some muscle. He needs to be bigger. But I'd rather trade Ingram. I'd
You'd
keep
trade
Kuzma.
Ingram over Lonzo as well?
Yes.
I agree.
I would trade Ingram. I want to keep Lonzo. I want to keep Kuzma. Why? Lonzo's, I think, is a cornerstone. He was the face of the franchise before Kuzma. I mean, he came at the same time
Yeah.
as Kuzma, but Ingram wasn't
But
really
he was
ever
the second
face.
overall pick.
Exactly. Ingram was never the face of the franchise.
Lonzo Ball's a face.
Exactly. So I think him, LeBron, maybe another star, and Kuzma, I think that's 4 to really work around. I don't think Kuzma should be traded, or just don't touch him. Leave him on the team, extend his contract, do whatever you want. If you're going to trade one guy, I think Ingram's the guy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Lonzo is the next behind Ingram. You definitely want to trade him before Kuzma, because Kuzma,
Yeah.
I feel like Kuzma's proven he's going to be a star in the league in some time. And obviously Lonzo, no one wants Lonzo because of his dad.
Correct.
And
That's
I
true.
never, ever, would I've ever thought I would be saying that, or other people would be saying that. Oh, we don't want that guy because his dad's annoying. Like, that's just...
It's so messed up.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the end of the day, though, I don't think Lonzo has affected the Lakers as much as it's made out to be seen with his dad. Like, I understand his dad goes out in the press, but at the end of the day, he's his own person. Lonzo's
Correct.
his own person. He does his own things in the locker room. He's been a great teammate. He's never been a guy to, like, call out other people.
Look, obviously LeVar Ball is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no arguing that. But I don't think he should be the sole reason that you don't make a trade to acquire Lonzo Ball. I think I've been high on Lonzo Ball since he was at UCLA. I think he is a star. Everyone says Ben Simmons is a jump shot away from being one of the best players in the NBA. I don't think Lonzo Ball is that far off either. He's a great passer. He hustles a lot. He grabs rebounds. He's a great defender. I think that once he gets his shot down, he's going to make a massive, massive, massive impact. And I do think Kuzma's more valuable than Lonzo. I agree with that. Lonzo's not that far off. And you
Yeah.
need a point guard with LeBron. LeBron, it's always nice for him to have another guy to handle the ball. You're going to get another scorer in Anthony Davis. You're not going to get another ball handler in Anthony Davis. So I do think Kuzma is more valuable.
But he's
But-
reached his ceiling almost. He's closer to his
He's
ceiling.
much
than-
closer to his ceiling than Lonzo.
Yeah.
And Lonzo's ceiling is much, much higher than Kuzma's.
I agree with you.
All right, let's move on from the Lakers and that debacle. So if you're
Nice
obviously
pun.
what
Diabolical. Ball.
not meant to be, but all right.
Knee
Ah.
slap if you're at home.
Anyways, so obviously we all said that no one's gonna beat the Warriors. So let's play the hypothetical. If you were to pick one team in the Western Conference to beat the Warriors, who would it be?
Oklahoma City, not even close.
I,
Paul George and Russell Westbrook are a dynamic duo. Russell Westbrook currently has 10 straight triple-doubles, and Paul George has he's averaging 35 in his last 12 games or something like that.
Yeah, I mean
They are both going on a tear right now. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They are just looking spectacular. I think they're going to challenge the Warriors when they face them. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to take it to 6 or 7 games.
I
And
agree.
the Warriors need to be paying attention when the Thunder come up, or else they could drop it.
You know,
I mean-
last year I felt the Warriors were going to the finals no matter what. Now they had multiple 7-game series, right? Thunder, Rockets, Jazz. Of those 3, I think it's possible that one takes them down. I think they could face 2 of them in their path. It's possible. Now, for me, I like the Thunder as well. I just don't think Russell Westbrook is going to win you those key series. I just don't think so. Now, he has guys like Paul George. Even Terrence Ferguson off the bench has been really electric. But if it's me, I really like James Harden. I like what he's doing there with Chris Paul, who will be playing all 7 games, hopefully. And, Utah's a young team as well. I think they cause problems for the Warriors. So, for me, I'm going to go with the Rockets, but the underdog side of me wants to go with the Jazz as the team that the Warriors don't want to face.
I agree that I feel like the Thunder is the second best team in this conference, but I feel like everyone's sleeping on the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, that's one of the.
Jokic is dirty. He is something
Definitely good for
special.
sure.
I think it's the best young duo in the NBA, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me. And I mean, they were winning the
Embiid
Western.
and Simmons.
Okay, I mean, you could go that route too, but I feel like results prove themselves, and I think the Denver Nuggets have a better record than the Sixers, and Denver's in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So I'll stick with my path, and they had the best record in the West until Boogie came back, and the Warriors have been unstoppable since then. So this is still a good team, playing in the Pepsi Center. Very tough to go up in the altitude and win. I feel like they could, if they could take a game at Oracle, they can possibly win that series. Obviously, they'd have to go through the Thunder and other teams like that, since the Warriors will probably get the number 1 seed. But I feel like the best shot any of these teams have is to go be the 1 seed. Because that way you don't have to play either Denver, Oklahoma City. You don't have to face them.
Mhm.
Golden State has to now. And I mean, that's how my uncle and I were talking about how will the Lakers make the finals. And we said it's not going to happen, but if they can be really good and get that 1 seed, have the Warriors face some other good teams, then they can do that. And that's the same recipe if you're the Thunder, the Nuggets, or even the Blazers. Blazers aren't that far off. Same with the Rockets, even though the Rockets are a one-man team at the moment.
And, if I'm the Lakers, I really hope the Warriors, they're only 2.5 games ahead. I'd rather face the Nuggets than the Warriors. I know they're a sleeper team. I know they're really good. But I think the Lakers' best chance is to face the Nuggets. The Nuggets will keep winning games because they care about the regular season. I don't really think the Warriors care about the regular season. The only reason why the Lakers care about the regular season is because they need to make the playoffs right now. That's the only reason. LeBron has really not cared about the regular season the past few years. So I think if the Lakers climb to that 8 seed and the Nuggets climb to that 1 seed, that's the path if LA wants a path to get real close.
Absolutely. Real quick, we got a couple minutes here. Right before we wrap up, I want to ask you guys a quick question. We mentioned the Thunder and we mentioned the Rockets. The questions kind of surfaced today throughout social media. What is the more impressive streak right now? Harden's 30 straight 30-point games or Russell Westbrook's 10 straight triple-doubles? We heard Michael Jordan's take that he thinks his 6 championships are better, which I agree with. But which of those 2 streaks do you think is better?
I'm going to go with Harden because scoring above 30 points in 30 straight games,
it's unreal.
They have 33 wins. And for 30 straight games, he's had 30 or more points. I mean, that's crazy. And, Westbrook has his own right to go crazy. But I just think James Harden's 30 straight games of 30 points or more shows that he's unstoppable. Because at some point, the teams are going to start saying, okay, we need to put this strategy to employ in order to pay attention to Harden only. And he still gets 30 or more points.
I'm going to agree with you based on Harden just because he went to Arizona State, and that's probably where I'm going. But seriously, what he's doing is so impressive considering the fact that he's getting no help from anyone else on his team. Almost every single one of his points are unassisted, and he's still getting assists. Obviously, he's never going to get the rebounds that Westbrook has, and what Westbrook is doing is certainly helped by the fact that he is Paul George. Taking nothing away from what Westbrook has done the past 10 games. Never happened before, but I'm going to go with James Harden because I'm probably going to Arizona State.
I agree with you. I think I'm going to go James Harden, not even because he's from Arizona State or because of whatever, just that Russell Westbrook has Paul George there with him, and Paul George has also just been going ridiculous the last 10, 12 games, and that's definitely been helping Russell Westbrook out a lot to help him get those points, to help him get those assists, maybe a little bit with the rebounds, not as much, but James Harden's been doing this whole thing on his own, and it's really just something that's spectacular to watch 30 consecutive games with 30 or more points. We haven't seen that since Will Chamberlain. It's just something spectacular to watch. I know we've never seen 10 straight triple-doubles, but we've seen Russ do a lot with triple-doubles in the past.
A lot of cheap rebounds.
That's not that's still amazing. So we're almost immune to it at this point.
Yeah.
And Harden's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
This guy has 30 straight 30-point games. That's ridiculous. So I got to give it to Harden just because I see him doing this on his own. And this is the first real massive James Harden thing. So
one last thing before we wrap up. So obviously we talked about college basketball earlier, and obviously there's the draft. I want to know, what are your guys' opinions on this? Who is going to finish the season with the worst record and have the best chance to tank for Zion?
Knicks. Not even close.
I don't know if it will be the Knicks, but I hope it is the Knicks just for their sake.
Right.
I'd really like for them to get a guy like Zion. Who knows?
I'm not saying it's going to happen right now, but the Knicks think that next year they could have Zion Williamson, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving.
Well,
think about that for half a second.
That's definitely big. Now, after that half a second passes, how about Cleveland? What if Cleveland tanks? Okay, I mean, obviously
we've been making the Zion to LeBron comparison for a long time now.
And then you get Zion to come to Cleveland. Now, you already have some young pieces over there in Cleveland that they're trying to work with right now, okay? And you get Zion to come to Cleveland, compare him to LeBron. How big does Cleveland get as a sports franchise in general? You have the Browns and now you have the Cavaliers with Zion Wilson.
You always find a way to make it about the Browns.
I mean, how much? That's a big market right there. Cleveland is not a market where they're going to have $200 million in cap space like LA or something like that. But now you have people that actually want to go to Cleveland to play sports, whether it's football, basketball, and who knows, the Indians, even baseball.
I just lost brain cells listening to that. But I'm going to go with the Suns just because they're in the Western Conference and they're going to face more quality opponents coming down the stretch. Because, the Knicks, they still have games against the Cavs, the Bulls, the Hawks.
They lost to the Cavs last night.
I understand that, Josh.
DeAndre Ayton and Zion Williamson.
To do
yes.
Devin Booker.
So the Suns, they're struggling.
There you go.
That's how to tank 1-1.
They're in the Western Conference. I feel like at the end of the day, because the new draft is that the lowest 3 teams all have the same odd to get the first
Not a
overall
big fan
pick.
of that.
It's just trying to prevent teams from taking and make it more entertaining.
That's
but-
true.
For the teams are going to tank either way you do it, and naturally the Knicks are going to finish last and don't have the best chance of getting Zion. Doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, and I also want the Suns to tank
Yes.
and get the first overall pick and take Zion because I will likely be at Arizona State next fall, and I want to watch Zion.
You don't want to watch a crappy Suns teams like they are.
No, they'll still
already.
be crappy, but they'll
Yeah.
have Zion.
Exactly. Zion sells tickets.
They'll be more entertaining than what they are now.
It'd be 2 number 1
Now,
overall picks.
if you remember from drafts past, Anthony Bennett was picked first overall by the Cavs.
Uh-huh.
What if the team that gets the number 1 pick, let's say it's not New York, because New York's picking Zion. They can't be
Every
that
team is
dumb.
picking Zion.
What if they don't?
Every team is picking
What if
Zion.
some European guy comes out of nowhere?
Every team is picking Zion first overall unless they trade the first overall pick, which would not be smart.
What do you mean? If you can get a big package, you can.
Yeah,
Like,
but
what if the Lakers come knocking on your front door and say, "Hey, we'll give you Lonzo, Ingram, and Lance or whatever
I'm taking Zion.
for the first overall pick"? You're getting what you know you're getting instead of because you never know.
I'm taking
Obviously,
Zion. If I'm the team with the first overall pick, Lonzo, Kuzma, and Lance are just gonna make me a bottom 10 team. I'll go from being the worst team in the league to being the 8th or 9th worst team in the league. Zion could become a superstar and make me a playoff team on his own.
but you just
You're
said
getting
earlier. Hold on.
3 players instead
Yeah.
of Zion, or
Yeah,
Zion.
that's a good point. And you also just said prior 10 minutes ago, Lonzo's going to be a star in the NBA.
I think Lonzo's gonna be a star.
So
But
why not
then
take
you don't know if-
Lonzo?
Zion has a better chance of being a star than Lonzo.
Okay, but then you also get Ingram. And you get Lance Stevenson, who's a
Ingram's
veteran.
Ingram is nothing.
I also heard you just say
And
Ingram has
We've been
potential.
saying for 4 years that Ingram has potential. And here we are still saying the exact same thing about Ingram since when he was drafted.
So Josh, would you take 3 good players or 1 great player?
or one potential great player.
And,
Yes.
and remember, Josh, you're still getting first-round picks.
Well, we don't know what this deal would be. If it's Lonzo, Ingram, and Lance, like Dom just said,
And their first-round pick. It has to be.
and their
There's no
first
way.
round pick this year, I'm taking Zion.
All right. I was just a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Won't happen.
Okay, tank for Zion. It's obviously in full effect, and Eastern Conference is going to be up for grabs, and whoever can beat Golden State. Great discussion today about basketball. Hopefully we finally proved to you guys that we don't just talk about baseball and football. We do know more than just those 2 sports. We'll try and record another podcast this week about baseball and some more off-season talk. You'll hear from the other guys, Caleb, Elon, and Jake, in that podcast. But for now, that'll wrap it up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sports Nerds in the Morning. I'm Dominic Stern, and on behalf of my colleagues, we thank you for listening.